I could tell you a lot about these people, but I'll weave it in a little bit with the questions to make it not too boring. Let's start with you, Anne. You are the segment manager, city farming at Signify Horticulture LED Solutions. And you are working there to also work with your customers, I would say, or your prospective customers to develop indoor farming projects. And Signify has been doing this for some time. I know a little bit about that myself. And can you tell us a little bit, say, you've been working with actually a range of different types of city farmers and city farming companies. You've seen startups, you've seen mature companies. What have you found that works and that doesn't work?
Yeah. Well, actually, with our almost 130 years Philips background in lighting, we're indeed probably not to be called a pioneer anymore. And actually this year we are celebrating our 15th anniversary in LED horticultural lighting. But I think also 15 years ago it started with a kind of vision and idea of a couple of people who were very passionate to explore the opportunity of lighting, LED lighting for the horticultural sector. And they simply had the guts to explore this and the drive to go through it. And always when I talk to them today, you still feel the enthusiasm from that time, and they tell me, hey, we always tried to put our customer centric, so we don't not only look at lighting, we try to look at the whole business case, trying really to find the right system, the right light recipe, crop recipe, growing recipe for our customers and their individual business case. And I think that's also what we have learned and how we're doing business today, that every customer that we're having, every vertical farm is individual, has its own individual unique business case. And with that you have to try to find your space in the market, your reason to be, if you want to say so. And then it doesn't matter that much if you're a pioneer or already what we call a settler. You have to find your unique way on how you do it.
Thank you very much. Nice. Any of the other panelists would like to add to that?
So the question again was?
Basically, Anne has just explained to us that they're working with many different types and different pedigrees of indoor farmers. And also that they are finding that every case needs to be looked at their own merits and that you need to find your own niche where you can be successful. And of course, what I'm really looking after is, can we identify some traits or some ideas that make some more competitive and more successful than others?
Yeah, no, I would simply add to that indoor farming is business, and business means people. And oftentimes, at least from my experience, it's never the business, it's never the plant, it's always the people. And so what's important is the right people. What we see in the United States now is a big, what we're calling a green rush towards becoming an indoor vertical farmer for many different reasons. And sometimes you see people entering this business that simply don't have the horticultural background that's needed. So I see that as being a challenge. But being a part of a university now, we're looking forward to training the next generation of farmers. So that's what I see, Gus.
Thank you very much, Jim. And maybe a quick word of introduction. Jim already said a little bit about himself, but Jim has been working in the indoor farming sector for I think about 25 years or something, forever at least.
Well, no, I haven't been in indoor farming for 25 years, only about 10, but I am a former customer of Signify, so I can say a few good things about the Cadillac of lighting companies.
But anyway, but Jim has a very long experience in indoor farming, different projects around the United States especially. And I think it can also share some very good insights as to what works better than some other things. So thank you for that. Art, let's also go to you. You also have a good bit of background in the sector. You've actually, I think, you're both a pioneer and a settler, or you're a pioneer becoming a settler.
Yeah.
Where you've also, gained a lot of experience in say, traditional horticulture or small-scale horticulture and other projects. But now you've taken GrowX, which has become GrowI, and done a remarkable change in that company to get it from a startup effort to something that really looks like a business now. Can you tell us a little bit more about that experience and what you've learned there?
Yeah, well, definitely would like to call myself a settler if I see the title of the speech here. Otherwise I get killed, so I hope we passed that phase. No, but in Amsterdam we have Growy. I started 2.5 years ago with GrowX, which was a small company that I took over with 120 square meter of growing area vertical farm here in Amsterdam. We used for microgreens for restaurants. And based on that experience and based on that market, we developed a new technology. So at the moment we have a 1,000 square meter pilot farm standing here with new technology, with Signify lights, and fully automated farm. And with that farm we now really want to roll it out over the world. So by the end of the year we're building in the US, and next year we're going to build in Dubai, Abu Dhabi and in Singapore. So we are really growing and expanding. So hopefully the settler space we will really reach now.
And can you share a little bit about what is making a difference? How are you expanding now versus GrowX having a difficult time before?
Yeah, I think, well, one of the things I think we also, I hope we always keep the pioneer mentality, because a pioneer for me is development, research, open-minded, and at one point I never want to become a settler, because I hate conservative, old-fashioned companies that always do the same. And especially I think in vertical farming we are literally just scratching the surface. We don't know anything about where we go. I mean, going to Anna's comment, if you are a light supplier for vertical farming, what is a vertical farm? I think there are hundreds. Every vertical farm is a different type of vertical farm, and every farm has different needs. It's not like a standard Venlo greenhouse where you can add things to. No, a vertical farm is really different. So I do think that vertical farming in general is always definitely still in a pioneering phase, because we don't know how we need to do it. We have our ideas, there are other companies that have their ideas, but I don't think we are in a settler atmosphere today.
I think I would agree. By the way, if you have any questions, please raise your hand and I can give you the mic. But now let's go to Carlo for a second. Carlo, you're a new face, not only in the panel, but I think also your company is a bit of a new face in the industry. You represent Schneider Electric, which is a very venerable and has been around company in electronics for a long time. We haven't really seen you around the indoor farming industry as much yet. Now, you personally, you come from the analysis consulting strategy background, where you're looking at how your company can assist in actually important changes in the world with to do with decarbonization, electrification, etc. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you look at indoor farming as an opportunity and what your company aims to achieve there?
Absolutely. So most of you may know Schneider Electric from the electrical component manufacturing, and indeed that's the big share of the company today. Industrial automation is part of it, but active energy management is becoming a bigger chunk of it more and more. And I work for the sustainability business. That's the consulting arm of Schneider Electric, and what we do is we basically develop strategy around end-to-end decarbonization for industrial applications, and anything that's energy intensive effectively is potentially relevant and interesting. And this is just a sector that is very energy intensive. This has a sustainability impact, and we hope to address it. To clarify, Schneider Electric is not, I'm the only non-grower in this panel, the non-native to this sector, and Schneider is most likely never going to go into that direction neither. So we provide the equipment and the know-how, but we are not going to be growers or competitors in this arena at any point in the future that I know of, at least. Yeah, for me, my angle is the sustainability angle, the energy intensity angle, and that I think is the big question, how to do that more sustainably, because currently we are assuming that it is not a major issue. It is now because of costs, of course, but the sustainability aspect I think is a bit underrepresented, so I'd like to be more outspoken about it if I have a chance.
Well, actually, that brings us to a very interesting topic, and let's just get right into it. As also a question to all four of you. Indoor farming, very nice, huge amounts of control, being very good with water use and not using any pesticides, all beautiful. But we're not using the sun, we're using electrical lights. These lights cost energy, and we're in a world where we're very concerned about energy use. So how do you make that fit, and how do you turn that into a working business model? Who can I give the floor there?
So I wouldn't be too far off if I said that the energy component can be complex. And here's an example. So you have an indoor farm and you'd like to go off grid. Maybe you own the building, maybe you're leasing the building, let's use the example of you leasing the building. You'd like to put photovoltaics up on your roof. You'd like to, again, get off grid. And so you'll ask your property manager or your business owner, can we put photovoltaics on our roof? And they'll say yes. But when you leave, they stay. And so oftentimes we know that this industry is very fluid right now. And in the particular situation that I'm describing to you, it was the farm that I was on, and guess what? A year after we asked that question, we took a nosedive and we failed as a business. So if we would have made that investment to put photovoltaics on our roof, it would have been a huge waste. And I say that only because, ultimately to get off grid, as we say in English, is kind of the goal, because energy costs really are a very large portion of what we're talking about. So that was my experience.
Thank you very much. And can you share a little bit about how Signify tries to address the energy use in indoor farms?
Yeah, I mean, energy is a topic, I think, wherever you're going to farm or cultivate anything. That's for vertical farming, that's the same for high-tech greenhouses growing over here. And definitely a hot topic. I think what you see across the industry is already since a couple of years that people are looking into the topic, that people are trying to improve on the topic. One thing that you can talk about is, let's say, renewable energy sources. One thing definitely from our perspective, we are, for instance, looking on how you can use the light in the most efficient way to grow your crops. But I think it's simply a given that crops need light to grow. And not everywhere in the world you can farm outdoors. Take the Middle East, take Iceland, but also there you have people, consumers, that are wanting to have fresh, healthy, tasty fruit, vegetables and fruit. So you have to deal with that.
Okay, thanks. Maybe another slightly different question to you, Art. You are saying you're becoming a settler.
I want to give my reaction on the energy.
Well, start with the energy then.
Now, with the energy, I think it's really important. In Holland, we are very lucky that it's very easy to buy green energy. So we can buy renewable energy easily. So here, I think the first step that any vertical farm should do is, and I think we're doing it from day one, is use renewable energy. That's one step. Second step is always, diminish the amount of energy we use by having flexible light plants, by giving the plant only what it needs and not from day one 250 micromole or whatever. Really it's just the light you give and the energy you use to the plant dedicated to the phase that the plant is in. That's the second important thing. And of course on the cooling side there's a lot of energy gain to be made. But the third part is always that I think, there are many advantages of vertical farming. If you talk about energy and people use it really as it's the main critics we get as a vertical farm, your energy use is too high. The question is, in the long run, is energy a critical thing on Earth? If I build a vertical farm in the Sahara tomorrow, there's sunlight energy for 2.5, 3 cents available as much as I want. So I didn't think, water is something that's scarce, biodiversity, land, but energy, we need to have it all renewable, but there is a lot of energy available. So if we use renewable energy and we look at all the other points, then I think energy can be overcome.
And I would add to that, if you do the equation of your cost per kilowatt hours, we're going to do math this morning, you guys. So if you take your kilowatt hours and you divide it by your yield or what you're totally getting, that can be an indication. And I don't know what your kilowatt hour charges are here in Europe, but if you get a kilowatt hour charge of less than, say, 6 cents in the US, that's good. But it's always that kilowatt hour price if you're really looking at your pennies.
It's over 30 cents. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay, that's expensive.
Well, things have changed recently due to war and other things.
If I may,
yes,
just
please,
step in on that. I think sourcing renewable electricity is certainly the first step. Jim, you talked about on-site PVs and the problems with that. You mentioned about buying renewable energy that is available from the grid, and I think there are different degrees in how this is done. You can source renewable electricity in different ways, and we are seeing the market mature, and there are more mature ways than just buying your traditional guarantee of origin, for example, which is just a certificate that you slap on up. I think the microgrid approach is considered more virtuous because it shows you are putting in the effort of trying to actively manage your energy on site to have that island mode if needed. There are other benefits, of course, but just from an energy perspective, it just shows that you are actively thinking and trying to manage it in-house rather than relying on external third parties which may or may develop new sites and so on. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
pleasure.
Let's switch gears a little bit and talk a little about the settler side of things. If you're a settler and you want to make money, then you need to also get people to buy your product. And this goes for indoor farms, but it also goes for suppliers to indoor farms. So how do you, on the supply side, also from personal experience, I know the game a little bit more because there's a lot of interest in investing in indoor farms, but how, as a sector and as indoor farmers, and I would especially talk to Art, who has experience there, and maybe also Jim, how do you get your product on the shelves? How do you get people to buy what comes out of your product, and how do you differentiate? Also coming from the Dutch environment where we have wonderful greenhouses that do really, really nice job, can you get any better? But you can also look at other regions in the world where you maybe have a bigger gain to make. Art?
Yeah, very simple. It has to be cheaper than anything else.
Can you work on the sound a bit?
So we have to produce a product that is cheaper in the market than the other products available. That's the simple thing. If you are cheaper, everybody wants to buy it. In the US, in Middle East, in Singapore, we are there. In Europe, it's very difficult because prices of vegetables are very low here. Salad prices are very low. But we always look, it has to be tasty, healthy, and affordable. And then I think there's a huge market. I was speaking to some people from France yesterday, and they say, but vertical farming is very negative, it's coming from indoor and people don't want it. But if you go to Asia, if you go to the US, vertical farming is an advantage over other products. If you go to Scandinavia, in Sweden, they admire vertical farming salads above organic farm salads. So depending on what area we are in. In Holland it's very negative because it's all about price. In other countries the other advantages can come more in line. But I think the most important is that vertical farming has to come down to a price level where it's not a high-end thing, but it's affordable for everyone.
I would agree with that, Art, but I would also say quality is a big part of it. And here's the story. You walk into a chef, to see a chef with your product, into a restaurant, and you show them and you let them taste it. And then you tell them the story of how you grew it. You tell them the indoor vertical farming story. And you'll see their pupils dilate because when they taste it, they're sold. And so, price, yes, quality, indeed.
We have 250 restaurants in Holland we supply, of which 40 Michelin star chefs. If we walk in, I can tell them a story about sustainability, about whatever, as soon as I open the product, they taste it. I'm a client.
Case closed.
Case closed. So taste is, and that's why I said tasty, healthy, and affordable. Tasty is on number one of our missions.
And by the way, if any of you become indoor vertical farmers or already are vertical farmers and you do that exercise, it really will be one of the funnest things you do because it's really where you're seeing the results of your work. When you see those pupils dilate and you see them say, yes, we like this, we love this, we want to buy from you, that's really, I think, very rewarding. I know you'd agree with that, Art.
I personally think that we need to stop that thinking of competing with different growing methods. I think every growing method has its reason to exist, based on certain climate conditions or based on specific consumer needs. I think with vertical farming and the fully controlled environment that we have actually gold in our hands, because there's no way in other growing methods to steer a crop that much, whether it might be flavor, it might be taste, it might be shelf life, it might be nutritional value, even on components level we can do it. And I think that actually gives us the ability to create products or bring products to the market that have a certain uniqueness. And I think that this is actually what our industry should be talking about. What is the unique thing that we can bring on the market rather than always trying to explain to consumers, yes, it's very safe. Of course it is. It's pesticide free and everything. But in the end, what's the consumer paying for? He is paying for food experience, for emotions in the end. And I think this is what we have to trigger more from an industry point of view. Even though There is a limited target group to that, and not everybody can afford very high value vegetables and fruit, but there's definitely a market for it, and I think that this is something that we have to approach more dedicated.
Okay, thanks. So if I add the two up, the story is you need to select what you're doing and select the right products and segments to cater to, and when you do it, you need to be competitive. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions in the audience? If you have any questions for the speakers here, throw them in.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Anne, for taking up shelf life, because we're a Swedish indoor vertical farm, and we found that our customer is not the end consumer eating the lettuce, it's the person responsible for buying it in the store. And when it comes to the number one takeaway from what we learned from selling our product, it all comes down to shelf life. So when we were presenting our product that we have 16 days of shelf life instead of 4 or 5 days, that's the number one reason. And I haven't really heard any vertical farm really taking that leverage and really aiming to have as long shelf life as possible for a product. So I would like to hear your takeaway on the possibilities of extending shelf life and lowering food waste, for example, in stores.
Yeah, if I can answer that, of course, it's on the top of our discussions with retailers always. So the shelf life is really important, and what we see with vertical farming, and I think also there we are just starting with pre-harvest treatments, cooling down when the plant is still alive, these kind of things, we can extend the shelf life a lot further for the future. So shelf life is really important. And if you talk about the climate, food waste is the biggest issue in the world. So I think by lengthening the shelf life, we reduce food waste. So it's a massive thing.
Indeed, and that's Eric Lundgren. He didn't introduce himself, but Eric, that's a really good question. And oftentimes shelf life can be mandated by your customer. Example, used to sell to PepsiCo. And PepsiCo had a very rigid shelf life because ultimately the product that we were selling them was not going into a retail area, it was going into a product. I don't know if you guys ever remember the Naked Juice brand of PepsiCo, Naked Juice. So when we sold to them, it was really based on our product going into their product. And so ultimately we sort of bypassed retail, and so shelf life was important, but it was also mandated by the customer. So that was my own experience.
Thank you. Other questions?
Can I throw this in there really quick though? Sorry, Aaron. When we're talking about fruiting crops and we're talking about shelf life, I got to do a plug for this company. If you guys can research them, if you don't know about them, check them out. They're in Santa Barbara. You know who I'm going to talk about, Aaron. Apeel, A-P-E-E-L, Apeel Sciences. They're doing some really cool stuff with extending shelf life for fruiting crops and avocados and elsewhere. So there's some really neat technology coming online to extend shelf life for fruiting crops. Sorry.
Yep. Yes, questions?
Thank you. I was at Indoor Ag in Las Vegas a couple of months ago, and several of the speakers indicated that they thought that vertical indoor growing would replace up to 50% of the market share by 2030. So just wondering if the panelists have any comments on that timeline, and if they see that happening at an accelerated rate in any portion of the world.
Never. Never going to happen. Never will indoor vertical farming replace to that kind of percentage, Aaron. Never. Maybe 20% in 20 years. But no way, Jose. And now, if we look at the numbers, it's like less than 1%, something like that. So it's quite small. I don't think so. I don't know what my...
Now, people ask, can vertical farming feed the world? Well, I don't think that's the goal of vertical farming. We do our contribution. We try to do it sustainable. We try to do it on our growth way, but we're never going to feed the world for 50% of it. And we're never going to... I mean, I used to be a farmer in the last year, but we're not going to replace farming with vertical farming. And we're going to replace part of the land pressure, and we're going to make sure that biodiversity can be taken place in agriculture, but we're not going to replace agriculture.
Yeah, vertical farming is actually a next step in the evolution of farming in total. It started with open field crops, then you went to low tech, then you went to high tech, now we have vertical farming. Who knows what's coming next? But I think it's simply part of the ecosystem.
And I like to use the word supplemental. And I'd like to do a plug right now for somebody that's sitting in the room that's working on fruiting crops, which of course is the next sort of moonshot, as we say. And that's Isabel Chamberlain from Plenty, who have signed a recent agreement publicly with Driscoll's, who are one of our planet's largest berry growers. And the goal is to grow strawberries in indoor environments with only LED lights as photosynthesis. So you go, girl. That's Isabel right there, you guys, from Plenty.
Carlo, can I also ask you to comment on this question? And how do you replace, or can it replace, where do you, from your vantage point, look at indoor farming and the opportunities for the sector?
I mean, from my side, not being the grower, I'm not well placed to answer this, but hearing this projection of growth, I'm wondering where will the energy for it come from? That sounds shocking. Everybody is sort of suggesting that's very unlikely, but I have to say that will be a massive footprint, and for this we don't have enough electricity or green electricity in the system as is. That would have to develop accordingly, but this sector is not the only one to be electricity driven, and certainly not the only one to electrify. So there will be also some strong competition, and at some point the prices are going to dictate what you're able to do and what not.
Thank you. There was another question here. Yeah.
I'm quite interested in, I'm quite interested in bringing vertical farming into cities, and I was wondering, or you think that vertical farming in cities should be a viable business case on its own, or is it okay to make it part of a larger business case, business model, meaning, for example, large-scale growing in a distribution center outside the city, and then more of a small city farm to communicate and showcase this new growing technology, and then rather using subsidies and this revenue from the large-scale farm to pay for the expenses rather than a standalone profitable business. So is there a way of financing it or just having a viable business case only by integrating it in the city without the outside sources?
That's an easy one. That's a very simple question. So yes, and we all know that by 2050, 80% of the world's population is going to be living in urban areas. So what's important is to build those farms where people are. And here's a great example. So we all know who the world's largest retailer is. Anybody know? Starts with a W. Okay, Walmart. So Walmart in the United States has 48 distribution centers. They would love nothing more than to have an indoor farm close to that disty center. Why? Because it'll cut their supply chain. It will make it so much easier in terms of their distribution, if you will. And so I would give the example in the state of Texas. There is an indoor farm called Eden Green Technologies. They are 2,000 feet, meters, from a Walmart distribution center. And when I have a conversation with the CEO of Eden Green, he says, Jim, that's the hardest 2,000 feet of our lives, but it's true. So that could be a model in the future in terms of large retailers, distribution centers, and being in a city where in the future, when you're my age, this will be ubiquitous.
Yeah, well, if I can answer it, it's for us it's the business case. So we have two concepts. We have a farm. The farm is large scale, 5,000 or more square meters per farm. That we put on the distribution centers of the retailers. Or that will be in food, logistics centers around the city, but never in a city. You're not going to build a large-scale vertical farm in a city. I can build it downstairs here in an empty parking garage in the middle of Amsterdam, but then all the product I produce, I have to truck out of the city to distribution centers to get it to the consumer. So that doesn't make sense. But there's the other part, that's the large-scale farm. But the other part is, we call it our growing house, which are buildings that we put in the cities. And with the growing house, we really want to attract the consumer, show people how it works. People can walk into a vertical farm, taste it, feel it, and believe it. But therefore, we do have a business case, because with vertical farms, you can also produce wonderful microgreens for high-end restaurants. So that small growing house does have a sustainable business case. And also because it's fully off-grid, we use the waste of the restaurant to produce the energy, so we can really make a showcase in cities. So we do have both options.
Good question.
Yes, thank you very much. A question to all panelists. Basically, we're sitting here, we're thinking about, okay, pioneering is still ongoing, but we're trying to get out of it, settling. So take another look a couple of years out, say 5 years from here, from today. Where do you think, within your personal vantage point, where we will be, where will you be, and how will we be making money with indoor farming at that time? Let's actually take the other way around. Carlo, can you take a bit of a look at where you think this industry can go and what it can do, also from a sustainability and energy point of view?
Right. Gladly. I started off this by mentioning that the title I thought was really odd. I don't particularly like it, but that's not really important. I have a saying that comes to mind when I read it, and this is about the early bird getting the worm, but the second mouse getting the cheese. And I think this is kind of somewhere in between. I don't know if the pioneer makes it or the settler makes it in the end. This is for the audience to decide, and for the other panelists maybe to answer. Generally speaking, I think I tend to say, as an outsider, that pioneering is probably more relevant, because I think the landscape around us, the energy landscape, but also the climate landscape and so on, is changing, and quickly. So you cannot just assume things will stay equal. You need to be quick and clever and adapt before things around you change too significantly. So I think this industry, as it's growing and maturing, it will need a pioneering approach, and just saying, I'm going to settle for what I got because I'm winning in the short run, that's probably not going to make it. That's my outsider perspective. Thank you.
So both pioneers and settlers die. They both get killed. That's really the deal.
In the long run.
Yeah, in the long run, they both are vulnerable, if you will. I believe in 5 years from now, we're really not going to be in the same place that we are today. And I believe that you as being former Signify and Signify can certainly talk about the cost of LEDs, the cost of energy, heat loads going down, et cetera, which is a big part of where we want to be in the future in terms of the cost to run a farm. And clearly we know that the capital expenses for lighting in particular could be upwards of 50% of your initial start costs. And just as a quick question, who's an indoor farmer here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Who wants to be an indoor farmer? Okay, about the same. And the rest of you just kicking tires and wanting to learn a little bit more. Okay. No, I'm serious about that. I don't think we're going to be in the same position we are today in 5 years from now. And in fact, in 25 years from now, by 2050, all the hype and the beautiful pink lights and the fun that we're having, it will be a thing of the past, and it'll be somewhat normal, if you will, especially for our young friends in the audience. It'll be normal.
Thank you.
I think it's going to be faster in 25 years.
Yeah.
The hype will be gone in 5 years, I believe. But I hope in 5 years that we as a company, we are really around the world running farms, but I also hope that we at that point reach a level of affordable food, that we are the cheapest affordable and sustainable food producer. So that it's really interesting. And we're not going to feed people in Dubai, New York, Amsterdam and London, but we're going to feed people in Kenya, in Ghana, in India, in Pakistan, because that's where we should be, and that's where we can really make impact. So that's, I think, where we are in 5 years.
Thank you.
I think without pioneers you won't have settlers, and without settlers you won't have an industry growing. So it's probably a little bit depending on your own personality where you're fitting in. When I look at the industry and also ourselves in 5 years from time, then I'm actually hoping that we have much more commercially successful vertical farms installed all around the world that are actually giving their contribution to let people eat in a healthy, fresh way. And as I said before, I think we have the ability to do so, to find our markets wherever we are in the world, and bringing those added value, might it be nutrition, shelf life we discussed, flavor, or even nutritional components to the consumer or to a certain customer, industry customer, whatever it takes. But I think that if we can produce those kind of products and market them in the right way, that we actually don't even need to compete on shelf store or shelf place in the supermarkets with other products coming from other, let's say, growing methods. but it can be an add-on. And I think that this should be our contribution to make people eat more healthy, more fresh, more tasty food all around the world. So our contribution for a healthy lifestyle.
Thank you. Thanks for a lot of good insights. I think rounding it off, I would like to ask one final question to all of you. Jim, thanks for doing the little questionnaire here for who we have. So it turns out we have an audience of explorers. Not quite pioneers, not quite settlers, but people that want to know more. So if you're exploring this opportunity, you're thinking about it, you're taking the effort to come to this show and to learn more, can you give, each of you give 2 points? One, what do you need to do if you're serious about getting into this business? And the other one, what should you avoid at all costs? Anne.
What you should avoid is probably having too high ambitions that are not meeting reality. And I think that this is what we have seen quite often, and what brings down again to what I said at the beginning. You have to create your individual business case and not trying to copy-paste, let's say, a business that probably might have been successful somewhere else in the world. You have to think on your own individual one. And when you, for instance, here in Northwestern Europe, you're blessed with fresh food. But when you go to Japan, as Art already said, for instance, their consumers are much more conscious about food safety, about contaminants. So your business case can be completely different ones than when you talk about a vertical farm business here in the Netherlands, UK, or in the US, for instance. And that is, I think, the most critical thing, that you need to have a vision and that you have the ability to turn your vision into a viable, successful business case.
Thank you. Very useful. Art?
I think most important is have a vision, stick to it. Don't listen to too many people who tell you how it works and how you should do it, but stick to your own vision and try together. Always stay a pioneer, never become a settler. I think that's all, and stay a farmer.
Stay a farmer, never become a settler. Thank you. Jim?
So the number one recommendation from me is passion. If you're not passionate about it, don't do it. If you're not passionate about it, don't do it. The second thing is once you get your building, you have to prove your crop and you have to prove the building. So don't put your open for business sign up until you've had at least 2 or 3 runs of a successful crop, and so you know your building is dialed in. I've seen too many farms that put their open for business sign up before they've proven the building from an engineering perspective, an energy perspective, and then the actual crop, the product that's coming out of the building. So prove those out and you're going to be good, but be passionate.
Great. I'd say leverage all the strengths and power of the sector. I think there are so many pros to this, so many great things you can do, and they've all been listed, so I don't need to go through again. But I'd say leverage them to the fullest. However, be careful of the way that you're consuming energy. And essentially, this means do not think that it's just a negative externality. This in other sectors have proven very problematic. I'm thinking data centers. Nobody cared about the electricity in data centers until they started to take a closer look, and all of a sudden, they're consuming 14% of Ireland's electricity, for example, last year alone, and that's massive. And now they are asking, do we want more of this? Do we need more of this? Is this sustainable? The sector is, in my opinion, still very sustainable. That's what it needs to defend. If it loses that coding, it will be a much more harder sell.
Well, with that, I'd like to round off. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all the panelists for your contributions, for a very, very interesting discussion. So this panel discussion is one in the series that we're doing from Farmtech Society, Indoor Farming Netherlands, for GreenTech this year. So also please join the other events that we're hosting here. And if you have any questions about where we are, what we can do from Farmtech Society for you, please look us up. I'll be around. Thomas Zellner is around here, and of course, do join. Thank you very much, and see you soon.